Good morning. We're so glad that you decided to join us today. Our mission here at the Northeast Church is to love God, grow deeper, and share Jesus. We hope that you see our values reflected in the way that we worship together today.
As has already been stated, we are happy you're here and grateful for your presence this morning. This morning we're going to talk about gratitude, and I want to begin by asking this question. Why is gratitude so important? Or let me put it to you this way. What does gratitude mean to you? How important is something as simple and basic as being thankful? Jesus told a story on several occasions. He told stories, but he also had personal encounters and experiences. On one occasion, there were 10 lepers. We read about this in Luke 17, who came to Jesus and begged him to have mercy on them and to heal them, and Jesus did just that. 10 people miraculously healed of a disease that would have made them social outcasts. And so the 10 of them leave, and on the way to the priest, they're all healed, but one of them turns around and comes back and thanks Jesus. And Jesus asks this question: were not 10 healed? Where are the 9? Gratitude and expressing gratitude makes a huge difference. Grateful people are joyful people. People who are thankful people and who express that thanks, it makes a difference in their relationships. A study was done several years ago at the University of Georgia where they interviewed almost 500 couples on subjects relating from all different aspects of their lives. Asked them lots of questions and asked them about the satisfaction they had in their marriage relationship. And it said in this study, as they concluded, the most consistent predicator of happy marriages was whether one's spouse expressed gratitude. That was the key thing they found. Not whether they argued or not whether they had difficulties or conflicts. It wasn't that. They go on to say this: what distinguishes the marriages that last and those that are healthy from those that don't is not how often they argue, but how they argue and treat each other on a daily basis. The study goes on to show that the power of the key to a happy and lasting marriage might be as simple as regularly expressing gratitude. So we just had the Thanksgiving holiday. And I don't know what your Thanksgiving day was like, but if you're a lot of people, for Thanksgiving, to a lot of them, it means the 3 F's. Family and friends, food, and what's this one? Football. I don't know how many of you actually watch football on Thanksgiving, but for a lot of people, that's what it consists of. And this whole idea of being grateful and having those memories tied up in the Thanksgiving holiday should be a reminder to us that Thanksgiving, while an important holiday, it was declared a national holiday by President Lincoln in 1863, ultimately, it's not about the food, although it does involve the food, and we're thankful for our food. And it is about friends and family, and maybe it'll be a little bit about football, maybe not. But the point is, for all of us as followers of Jesus, Thanksgiving Day should be every day. And so in the verse this morning that was read by Noah, I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of your wonderful deeds. Thankful with all our hearts to God. And then a part of that is also telling of all your wonderful deeds. I mean, you think about it this morning. We are all present here. And we were able to get up this morning and take a breath of life and get in our cars and drive to this place and experience this worship service together. And those are things that, we do all the time. We have our regular routine. But did you ever think about what an amazing gift just the gift of life is? That God allows us to experience this, an existence that is created and made possible only by Him. And so, a lot of times we think of, when we talk about giving thanks, we think about maybe the big things, the stupendous things, and we're thankful for all of those. But those big things are made up of little things. Every day, we take 23,000 breaths. Think about that, 23,000 breaths a day. And it's an amazing process. We don't think anything about it. We breathe in the air, we take in the oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide, and that's what enables us to continue living, moment by moment. A small thing, a little thing, but all those little things, they add up. And so Paul says this in 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Give thanks in all circumstances. I had a lady tell me one time, she was going through a hard time. She was going through a hard time in her marriage, dealing with problems with her children. And I remember us having a conversation, and it centered around this verse. And she said, Grady, honestly, I tell you, I have a hard time. And the King James language here says, in everything give thanks. And she says, quite frankly, I have a hard time with that. Because right now, I am not thankful for what I'm going through. The difficulties and the trial and the pain and the heartache. But I don't think ultimately that's the point that Paul is making here. And I'm thankful for this translation in some of your newer translations. It says, give thanks in all circumstances. And it's a reminder to us that no matter what circumstance that we're in, we can always find a reason to give thanks. Paul says in Philippians chapter 4, he says, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, with prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So I think in terms of living in the now and living in the present and giving thanks right now, and always trying to be able to find ways that we can give thanks in every circumstance helps us live in the present. And being able to pray to God with thanksgiving and give those needs and burdens to Him helps us live in the right now with a peace that surpasses all understanding. I know that's, easy in theory, but when you're going through the hard times, and I know some of you have gone through some very rough, difficult times this year, that even going through those tough times and offering that thanks and praise and prayer to God, that He will help you at some point to be able to look back and see how His hand was working in all of these circumstances and situations. We don't always see it immediately. But I think it comes through this instruction to us to learn to try to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. And I think we can do that. I think day by day, bit by bit, we can train our hearts to be more thankful. There was a study several years ago that I read about, and it really fascinated me. And it was done by someone in Harvard. Sean Acor was his name. And they did a study. And he was a psychologist at Harvard. And they did a study, and they asked a group of people, were asked to take 5 minutes a day at the same time every day to write down 3 things they were thankful for. And it didn't have to be anything big. It could just be something simple, like I enjoyed my dinner last night, or I'm grateful that my son or my daughter gave me a hug. I'm grateful that my boss complimented me at work. There's so many things people could say, and it wasn't as important what they said, is that they took the time and the discipline to write down, spend 5 minutes a day and think about what they were grateful for. And the study goes on to say at the end of 1 month, researchers followed up and found that those who practiced gratitude, including those who stopped the exercise after 1 week, were happier and less depressed. Remarkably, after 3 months, the participants who had been part of the 1 week experiment were still more joyful and content. Incredibly, after the 6-month mark, they were still happier, less anxious, and less depressed. The researchers hypothesized that the simple practice of writing down 3 Thanksgivings a day over the course of a week primed their minds to search for the good in their lives. So friends, I'm not saying that it's easy, because I know what some of you are dealing with. But we can still train our hearts to be thankful. Let me ask you to try something. I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions, and then we're going to have our speakers this morning. Maybe at the start of the year, you can start right now. Consider establishing in your own life with your journaling a Thanksgiving journal. And I challenge you to find the time every day to write something down, 3 or 4 things that you are grateful for. And the simple practice of doing that will help you be more thankful and thinking about those things that God has given you every single day. And let me give you a second suggestion, and it's this. Take some time to write some thank you notes to people. I think it not only will bless their lives, but I think it will bless your life as well. The ex-CEO of Campbell's Soup Company, several years ago, over a period of 10 years, wrote 30,000 thank you notes to employees and other people as well. And you think, how does a CEO of a big company have the time to write 30,000 thank you notes? Well, it was over a 10-year period, and he spent a lot of the time as he commuted and was traveling to do that. But he said it helped him as a CEO of a company, as he was looking at people and looking at situations. He had trained his mind to think critically, to think how people can do better, how things can change. And he said that by doing that, it helped him to train his mind to see people holistically, and it made a difference in his attitude about life. So having said that, this is the last thing I want to say here, last but not least. Count your blessings. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, if you are discouraged, thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. What are you thankful for? I am thankful for my family. I am thankful for my wife and my children and my grandchildren. And sometimes I experience what ifs in my life, and I think, what if someone hadn't reached out to me with the gospel? What if I hadn't been encouraged to go to Lipscomb by a friend who was also a youth minister? I never would have met Jeannie. I wouldn't have had 2 wonderful kids and grandchildren. I wouldn't have experienced what I'm experiencing right now with this church body. I've been here 42 years plus. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for you. We have a wonderful congregation. And we have a lot of people who are engaged and involved in the work of Jesus and encourage each other. I'm thankful for the staff we have here at Northeast. I see what these people do week in and week out, and I'm grateful for every single one of them. And I'm thankful for their spouses. And I want to give a special thank you this morning to our elders, the shepherds of this church. And I've mentioned this before, but I can't say it enough. We have 7 men and with wonderful spouses who are deeply committed to this church. And they are not a board of directors, and they meet every now and then and make a decision or two and then just kind of go on with their lives. Every shepherd of this church is deeply involved in the life of this church. And that sets a tone for all of us. For all of us. So thank an elder if you get a chance this week. And thank their spouses for the encouragement and support they give as well. And so we go back to Psalm 9:1. I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all your wonderful deeds. So probably for 30 plus years, our tradition here at Northeast has been to ask a couple of people from our congregation to give their own personal perspective on thanks. Much in the spirit of Mark chapter 5, when Jesus heals the demoniac there in the Gadarenes and casts the demons from him, and he's whole and he's made well, and he wants to go with Jesus, and Jesus says, no, I don't want you going with me. This is what I want you to do. I want you to go home to your family and friends and tell them the wonderful things that God has done for you. And so this morning we have a couple of the members of our congregation who are going to be able to share their thoughts this morning on gratitude. Mocha Thomas and then Rick Moore will get up and speak. And so, Mocha, let me go ahead and invite you to come up here. When I asked Mocha to do this, there was a part of me that thought, this isn't. I'm going to tell you right now, folks, this is not easy for Mocha to do. But I'm grateful for this guy. And he has the greatest shoe collection of anybody here at Northeast. So are you going to give thanks for your shoes?
I'll leave that part out.
All right.
I'll leave that part out.
All right. All right, brother.
I definitely want to say that you and Penny told me there were going to be less people. Don't think that's right. Don't think that's right at all. As Grady said, I'm Mocha. I'm usually the guy who has his head down, not trying to talk to anybody. But I would definitely say when Grady asked, my first thing I said was, I got to pray about it. Not public speaker in any capacity. I'm definitely a back row Christian, as they would say. But, I guess I'll start with a little bit of my story. I'm originally from Tennessee. I lived there majority of my life until early 20s. Went to Lipscomb for 2 years, got a concussion, decided maybe college isn't for me, moved up here. And I will definitely say the first time I came to Northeast wasn't on my own accord. I probably physically had to be dragged into the church. But a lot of that was just because I was dealing with a lot of past history from my old church and didn't really have a faith at that time. And to make matters worse, the first sermon I got to hear was from Nick Hutchins. And if you've heard Nick speak, he can really make you think about God and God's love. But what's even funnier than that is I thought Nick was the preacher. That's what I went under my assumption because he was the one preaching. And so the next Sunday, when I see a shorter man on stage that kind of looked a little like Santa Claus, I was like, I don't know if this church is for me. But I sat, I listened. It was a great sermon. I'm glad I did, though, because that let me meet two people from this church that have meant so much to me, and I thank God for every day. And that would be Mark and Penny Dugan. I'm not going to get emotional. We got too many criers. Can't be another one. See, now I'm so nervous I can't even turn the page. But no, meeting Mark and Penny were a major turning point in my life. I mean, without them, I wouldn't have a faith. I most likely wouldn't be here to begin with. But it's one of those where, as I've looked back, and if there's any question of whether God worked in my life or not, Mark and Penny are the proof. And just the way that they have truly accepted me into their family and the rest of their family. Amy, I'm talking about you. She made sure that I had to mention that I got 2 new sisters as well. So, but no, it's definitely, they have been more of a blessing than I ever thought they would. And I just wouldn't be here without them. But I will say, it's definitely made me have to talk to God. When we lost Mark, it was one of those where I felt that God gave me a taste of something, and then he took it right away. And for me, that just wasn't okay. But I think God also, he taught me that I should be more thankful for the time that I have with people rather than the time that I didn't get. I promise, Penny, I'm going to talk about you. But also I'm going to do it more in telling stories. So most of you probably know I was in a really bad work injury. I fell through a concrete hole. I injured 2 arms and a leg. And 3 out of 4, I was trying to go for the 4th. Couldn't get it, but it's all right. And with that, I mean, I'm a very active person. I like to be working out, like to work. And I remember asking God, hey, I need a break. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Didn't think that was going to be how he was going to do it, but I've learned now to be a little more careful about what I pray about. So we're working on that. But as you know, Penny was basically my in-house nurse for a year and a half. I mean, when it came to tolerating the hair, learning how to wash my hair, yeah. She did great. She did great, by the way. It was amazing. But also, you should ask her a couple of times about dealing with me after surgeries. When I am coming off of the laughing gas, there's definitely a couple of times where she had to put me in my place, ran my mouth a little too much, but it also taught me just how thankful and how necessary having a community surrounded by everyone meant so much to me. Uh-oh, I lost my place already. There we go. Okay, now we're good. But no, Penny has prompted so much growth and change in myself, whether it's, hey, maybe you should think about that. Or, hey, actually go ahead and pray about it instead of saying that you're going to pray about it. She's helped me talk to people. We're still working on it. It's a work in progress, but I'm here. I'm up here. That's the biggest goal of ours. But the last couple of years have honestly been probably one of my most trying times in my life. And it's one of those where this most recent sermon series about community and about the congregation have meant so much to me in ways that I didn't think, because I wouldn't be able to do anything these past couple years without having people take me to doctor's appointments, help me fix food, do my hair. And so for me, going along in life thinking, I don't need to talk to anybody, I'll just sit in the back, love God my own way, it means a lot. And it hits more at home now to think about what I'm actually thankful for, since I've been able to sit, think it over. I can see how it's changed my life. But God has worked in so many ways that sometimes I can't say thank you enough. And it's one of those where I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best to keep thanking him. But Thanksgiving means a lot to me. Whether it's family, friends, or a congregation that accepted my weirdness every once in a while, or my weird-looking shoes. I'm so thankful that I found Northeast, that I found my faith, and I found that people who love, support me, and push me to be the better version of myself than I could have done by mine. But I think that's about all I have to say. I hope that was 5 minutes. I don't know. I didn't get a signal in the back, so I'm hoping that that's good. But, all right, I'll hand it off to whoever else wants to get up here and talk.
First of all, thank you for that warm welcome. I appreciate that. Very nice. Try to keep it quick this morning. I should start off by saying I'm very thankful to have children who call Jesus Lord, and a godly wife who calls me darling. I think that sums up my thankfulness. But I wanted to share a couple of things that have happened this year that I think we can all rejoice in. You all have seen in the news all the baptisms that are taking place on college campuses. Ohio State, I think in August, had 60 or so by football players. I don't know what those football players are doing now after yesterday, but Alabama, Auburn, Florida State, all had several hundred baptisms. University of Georgia baptized 150 kids or young people in the back of a pickup truck. I'm not sure what all are being taught. I'm not sure the mode of baptisms, but Paul says we rejoice anytime Jesus is being proclaimed, and therefore we do. This year, Jeff Hargis and I started helping early this year, I guess around January, so Jeff started before I did. We started helping a preacher out in Highland County, just outside of Hillsboro. He had a Celebrate Recovery ministry, and he asked us to help him. And so I started going out there on Friday nights, and this is my very first Friday night. I pull up to this renovated old house. Lost sheep welcome is postered on the side of the building. Walk in, and it's sort of been repurposed into these classrooms, a small auditorium kind of thing. Used to be a living room / carport. And there's probably 60 or so people there. As I talked to Carl, he was the local preacher, he was headed out the front door, and he said, Rick, there are a couple people up front that want to be baptized. I would like you to talk to them and take care of it. And then he was gone. And my first time there, so I walk in, and I see Jeff, and I tell Jeff what's been requested of me. And I say, where's the baptistry? And Jeff says it's that contraption over there. It's near the front row. It's on wheels. And it's a portable baptistry. I'm sure you all have seen those things. To me, it looked like one of those things that they used to use in Akron at those go-kart races, the square boxes with wheels, went down a hill. And so I walked over and checked it out. And you touch that thing. It's got a little water in it, and you touch it, and the water moves, and it moves. There's some paneling, 1970s vintage paneling on the side to try to dress it up a little bit. I look down, and it's heated, by the way, heated baptistry out there, because it has wires hanging over the side down into it, and there's a rod with a heating element, the kind they use to put in horse troughs to keep water from freezing in the wintertime. So the water's good, it's nice and warm, but it's a little low. And so again, I asked Jeff, what do we do here? There's not enough water in here. I'd like it to get a little higher. With this whole concept of buoyancy, because the person doing the baptism stands on the outside, and you have to bend over and lift up. So I'm thinking to myself, obviously, and how do we get some more water? And Jeff says, he actually said, there's a garden hose out back, and just go in and drag it through and fill it up. So I go out back, and sure enough, there's a garden hose. Dust off or knock off some of the mulch. I drag it through people, weave it in and out of chairs, put it up into the baptistry. No, there's no nozzle on it. So I turn it on, and I go over and start talking to the people who want to be baptized. I talked a little longer than I should have to them. But not too late. I got there just in time to stop the water flow. It came about an inch or so from the top. Pretty good. So turn the water off. Go to talk to this people. So there's a man, probably in his 30s, woman's probably in her late 20s or so. And the woman's in the front, and the guy is standing behind her as if he is in a line. Now, how many churches do you walk into and there are people in line waiting on you to baptize? I mean, that's not I don't know about you, but I don't see that a lot. So I start talking to these folks and talk to the lady first and go over the gospel. Yes, we've studied. And so obviously someone has already presented the gospel to them. So we talk about that. I finish up, and the guy's right behind her. He's been listening in, and he said, may I be baptized too? Sure. So I bring them over, put them, and we have their confession in front of people, stand in front of the portable baptistry, and we kind of move it around a little bit because it's moving. And by the way, there are a couple steps, maybe 3 wooden steps that have been fashioned, and they're scooted up against the end of the baptistry. So you don't want to bump it in too hard because the stairs separate from the water. So Jeff goes around on the other side of it, and he's going to help me. And a lady, you remember Jeff, she starts walking up these steps, and her feet are about level with my eyes. There is no rail. She's just up there. And if you fall, try to fall into the water. Because it's nice and high now, not a lot of ways to fall. So Jeff helps, and she walks down. And as she gets close to the bottom, it's nice inside. There's a little step there. She can sit down. And I say to her, just lean back, and I'm going to make sure you're immersed in the water. And then I'm going to raise you up, and I want you to kind of spring up with your legs. I should not have said spring. Because, remember the whole water level. Instead of thinking about water displacement, I should have been thinking, or buoyancy, I should have been thinking of these other kinds of physics that talk about what happens when you come up out of water that has been displaced like that. When she springs up, a tsunami comes across the side, hits the side of the baptistry, and passes right over me. And I take a step back. I turn around and look at the guy on deck. His face is soaked. And he's smiling, and he looks at me as if to say, "Am I good now?" And I said, "No, we've got to do this. And you're not going to get any wetter than you already are." So we help him in. And I realized later, for those biblical scholars on the whole immersion thing, that in one moment, in one act, we had illustrated immersion, pouring, and sprinkling all at one time. The front row is kind of doing this because they're right up close. And those things are wonderful, wonderful experiences. I mean, we can have these conversations. You can fact check me, if in case I've gotten off track a little bit, but it really did happen like that. And in that little baptistry, and this was around December, January, about a year ago. Since that time, there have been somewhere between 32 and 36 additional baptisms since January. It's going on out there, and we just show up and see people giving their life to Christ, and how exciting it is to see the gospel proclaimed and people coming to you saying, "This is something I need. I want to be buried with Jesus, and I want to be raised to new life." I have said all of that just to say this, and I think Grady mentioned earlier. You mean the leper who came back? I feel like I need to be that leper in front of you. And just remember a time many years ago when a couple of missionaries came to Turkey, the Islamic nation of Turkey, and I was living there at the time, and they faced some hostilities and some inconveniences and some troubles, and they taught the gospel, and they taught me the gospel. Earl Seal, Joe Mohorn. Earl Seal, Joe Mohorn. I'll never forget those two. And so this Thanksgiving season, I found Earl died earlier this year. But this past week, during Thanksgiving, I found Joe Mohorn somewhere down in Arkansas. And I called him and said, "Joe, you remember me?" Of course, he said he did, and I believe he did. He told me the other day that in Turkey alone, he baptized 26 people, more than 26, but 26 people went on to become gospel preachers from Joe Mohorn alone. And I said, "Joe, I just call you up and to thank you for what you've done for me." He said, "Rick, he said this again. He said it. He said, I was talking to my wife, Cheryl, just a couple days ago, and we were talking about you. 50 years ago, next month, January 27th, 1974. Someone came and someone shared the gospel with me. So I want to thank those men in front of you. I want to thank Jesus Christ for saving me and all of us from all of our sins. God bless you.
Thank you for taking time to participate in our worship today. We hope that you are leaving filled and ready to go out and to be a part of what God is doing in the world. If we can help you along your journey, we hope that you'll reach out to us. You can find out more information about the Northeast Church at www.northeastchurch.com.